Welcome to You, Me, Empathy. Thank you for listening. We would like to remind you that this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Known as just a silly boy with a feely heart. Please consider supporting the show. Check us out on Patreon or simply leave a review on iTunes. Here's your host and creator of the show, Known Wells.
Hello, Feely Humans. Welcome to another episode of You, Me, Empathy. My name is Known Wells, and this is episode 130 on exploring the roots of our mental health struggles with my guest, Emily Lynn Paulson. Emily is a coach. She's also the author of the book Highlight Reel: Finding Honesty and Recovery Behind the Filtered Life. Go check out that book and give Emily a follow on Instagram. She's at Highlight Reel Recovery. That's REAL Recovery. In this episode, Emily and I talk about recovery from substance use disorder, the sober curious movement, being a gifted child, the pride that comes with being in control, even if that control is damaging, and getting to the roots of our mental health struggles. This is a really great episode, and I really enjoyed chatting with Emily. This actually, we recorded right as the coronavirus stuff started, and Emily's down in Mexico. And there are a few like little audio snafus in there, but I tried to clean up most of it. Anyways, I think you'll love it. I loved it. And I think you'll love Emily because she's a wonderful, feely human. Before we get to the episode, though, I just wanted to remind you that on May 27th, you guys, the Feely Human Collective is launching fully to the public, and I am filled with so many feelings of anxiety and excitement and nervousness and fear and just all the feels. And I've been working on this thing for the better part of a year, and I can't wait to show it to you. And if you're new here, the Feely Human Collective is going to be a new mental health collaborative community where you can write in a journal, and there's a shop where independent artists can come and share and sell your art in the shop. Also, I'm launching with a free workshop called Feely Human 101, and there will be other workshops coming, paid workshops from various amazing Feely Humans, and you can also lead a workshop too if you feel called to. And it's just the online space, the online piece of it is going to be the first phase, and then my goal is to eventually take these workshops and these ideas of growing our mental health through empathy and vulnerability and emotional wayfinding into the real world, into the offline world, into businesses and schools, and doing retreats and all these types of things. Those are my goals for Feely Human Collective. But for now, on May 27th, it'll launch with an online space, and I am so excited to share it with you. So make sure to go to feelyhuman.co, that's feelyhuman.co, to learn more and to please sign up for the newsletter. And there'll be a monthly newsletter, so make sure to sign up for that at feelyhuman.co. And mark your calendars, May 27th. So excited. So very excited. Also, make sure to follow Feely Human at Instagram, or on Instagram, at Feely Human, and Twitter, at Feely Human. On May 27th, I'll be doing a bunch of Instagram Lives with some friends and some big names, and so make sure to follow at Feely Human on Instagram. And follow, of course, the show on Instagram at You, Me, Empathy. And lastly, if you haven't left a rating and review of this podcast, I put a lot of work into this. It's a weekly show. You get it for free, and I know that's how podcasts work, but it's an independent podcast, so I don't have advertisers. I don't even know how that works, but I probably don't have enough listeners for that. But if you're listening and you haven't left a rating and review for Yumi Empathy in Apple Podcasts, please do that. It does help out the show. The more ratings and reviews, this show climbs higher in the charts, and then more people can see it. And then more people are getting more empathy in their lives. And that's what the world needs. Okay, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Okay, let's get to it, right? Let's get to it. This is episode 130 with my guest, Emily Lynn Paulson, on the roots of our mental health struggles. Enjoy.
La la la, you, me, empathy, yeah, la la la.
Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, a podcast about exploring the struggles we face in our day-to-day lives as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of Yumi Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our mental health, our neuroses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire emotional and cognitive collaboration and insight, so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that makes us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being feely humans. Yumi Empathy is a safe, friendly space designed to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today, I'm highlighting real joy because I'm here with passionate recovery advocate and coach, entrepreneur, and author of Highlight Reel, Finding Honesty and Recovery Beyond the Filtered Life. It's Emily Lynn Paulson. Hello, Emily.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so happy to have you. I'm just going to admit it up top. I have not read your book yet.
That's totally fine. That's totally fine.
Thank you for that. But I'm excited to get into it and to get into your story of sobriety and recovery and all of that, wonderful stuff that you're highlighting in your life and in your book. So really grateful to have you. Before we get into your story, though, we always do a little emotional check-in at the top. How are things? How are you feeling?
I'm a little anxious. I'm not going to lie. Like I was telling you before we got on this call, my family took a little impromptu trip down to Mexico. Last week, we live in Seattle, and our kids' school got closed, and we kind of thought it would be best to isolate ourselves away. And, there's a lot of mixed feelings about that. Should we have gotten on the airplane? What if we can't get back? So I'm having a lot of mixed feelings right now, to be honest with you. I'm loving the time with my family, but also just feeling a little bit worried about the situation back home.
Yeah. I mean, I know that I relate to that 100%. And I know that many of our listeners have expressed similar sort of concerns, anxieties. Like yesterday, my wife and I went to Sprouts, which is a, grocery store, and, people were calm-ish and kind and sort of milling about and minding their own business. But there was certainly a level of anxiety in the air that was kind of palpable. And it's a strange feeling. I remember like the feeling, like right after, like, I'm not saying this is the exact one-to-one comparison, but like the feeling right after 9/11, there was a sense of like, what do we do now? There was like a sort of a, we put pause on life for a moment, and that's kind of what it feels like right now. And it's unnerving.
It's eerie. It's very eerie.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're in this routine where it's very known. We know what we do. We get up, we do our thing. And now it's, well, now what? And there's a lot to embrace in there. There's a lot of, we can slow down. And but there's a lot to consider, and it's hard to take it on all at once. Do I need to stock up on all of my groceries for the next 60 days, or you don't want to, like, your brain can really start telling you stories about what the future is going to look like, and it's hard to know how much to panic, for lack of a better word, without panicking.
Right.
You know?
How are things going? Like, how are you sort of managing that with, like, being a mom, and sort of what are you relaying to your kids?
I'm trying to be the flight attendant on the turbulent flight, right? Like, I feel like whenever I'm on a plane, that's what I always think about is, if there's a big bump or really, bad turbulence, and I look at the flight attendant and they're totally calm, then it calms me down, because I know if they're not freaked out, like, there's no reason for me to be freaked out. But as soon as the flight attendant jumps or starts to run to her seat or run to get on the intercom to talk to people, that's when you think, okay, something must be going wrong. And so I try to be like the calm flight attendant for the kids. And, well, the schools are closed and we need to wash our hands more, but here's what we can do. We can, we can do a lot of crafts. We can go outside and build that garden. And trying to focus on the positive. And I do think kids are really looking toward their adults, and it's hard because I've never been through something like this.
Right.
So it's hard to know what to do, but I'm just trying to be the calm flight attendant. That really is like my mantra right now. Yeah.
I really love that analogy. It's really spot on. And I feel for, I'm not a parent, but I feel for, parents out there with kids who, certain, like the parents, as you said, like, haven't dealt with something like this, and certainly the kids haven't. And so, I think it's important, as you said, Emily, focus on what we can control, hold on to your loved ones, make sure that, they're going to be okay, and tell them that they're going to be okay. I'm wondering, like, for you, when it comes to kind of presenting that calm front, how are you getting there? Is there a bit of like putting on a face, or is it like, what are some ways that you're, getting to that calm place? Sure.
Well, I definitely credit my sobriety to a lot of that. And I'm glad that, over the last 4 years, I've come to a place where I have learned to deal with things, because in the past I would have just filled the vacation fridge with booze and just drank through it.
Sure.
And calmed down that way. And so I have learned through all of these things that maybe weren't pandemics, but in my life were, pretty, sobriety, going through sobriety, getting sober is pretty big crisis. And so learning those tools, meditating, going for a walk, deep breathing. So just really taking care of myself. When I wake up in the morning, like centering myself. That's one thing that I have done for quite a while, is I connect with all my senses. And it sounds kind of corny, but it's like, what do I see? I turn on my little daylight lamp at home. And what do I feel? I start writing in my gratitude journal. And this really only takes me about 5 or 10 minutes every morning, but I just touch with all my senses. Okay, I smell the coffee pot. I can hear the bird outside. I feel the carpet underneath my feet. And so really tuning into myself and makes me realize, okay, I'm in my body. I'm here. I'm okay, despite what everything else is going on in the world. And I do think my kids look at that, instead of, having a mom who's totally, hungover and tired and stressed out. I'm kind of the calm presence. And I can't always say that I was. So I do credit that process, my getting sober process, to being able to maintain that during this pandemic.
Yeah. I'm so grateful to hear that. And that's such a beautiful picture you paint, your morning routine, sort of checking in with all your senses. I love that. I think what that, a lot of that speaks to is really emotional regulation, right? There's so much that we do in life, and certainly alcohol can be one of those things, where we replace the sort of the real emotional regulation, the real sort of checking in with our bodies and our senses, and the real work with, alternatives that really don't work for us. Like, if we're using alcohol for that purpose, or if we're using, other methods for that purpose that aren't really truly connecting our bodies with a feeling of being grounded and a feeling of being present and connected.
Right. Like the temporary solution as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to a permanent solution.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, it's important that, you know, I have told the kids too, like, gosh, I don't necessarily know what's going to happen. And yeah, it is scary. That it's okay to be scared because, gosh, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what's going to happen. I think everything's okay. I hope that everything's going to be okay. And I know we will be okay. Our family will be okay. They'll still have their parents and, you know, but that it's okay to acknowledge, gosh, this is a scary thing that's happening. It is hard that you can't see your friends right now. It is hard that you're not going to see your teachers and still being able to check in and acknowledge that those feelings are still totally valid. And it's valid right now to have a little bit anxiety and feel a little bit of that panic because this is uncharted territory for a lot of us.
Totally. Yeah. No, really great point. I'm curious for you, Emily. I want to get like a little picture of, you know, your childhood, young adulthood, sort of time before you became sober and what that looked like and maybe some seminal moments from that part of your life.
Sure. So I can really go back. I can go back pretty far and know that I had a lot of depression and anxiety from a very young age that I can't really attribute to anything. You know, even as far as like 8 years old, I can remember feeling just different, feeling just not a strong sense of self and not really knowing where that came from. I was kind of deemed gifted when I was younger. So I skipped kindergarten, was put into first grade. And I do think that played a part in my emotional intelligence. I was much more immature physically, emotionally than my peers, even though, you know, maybe I could say my ABCs or whatever I could do at that age to deem me gifted. And so I think that played a part in it a little bit. I really never felt like I fit in. And I did start kind of doing things that maybe I wasn't emotionally ready for. And I never was able to check in with myself. And so when I was a teenager, you know, the kids who were in my grade who were drinking, that's just what kids in my grade did. And so I would do those things because that's what my peers were doing. So I sort of absorbed a sense of self from other kids. So I think, you know, it's hard to know the chicken and the egg, like what started what. But, you know, my childhood was loving. I have two, you know, wonderful parents who are still married and, you know, no childhood's perfect. You know, I don't have that like glaring story, right? I don't have that horrible like story from my childhood really until my teen years when I experienced a sexual assault when I was a preteen, and I think because I really didn't have a strong sense of self as a young person, that by the time I got to that point, I started varying things. And that's where I just had this really strong feeling that I wanted to be good and I wanted to be accepted and I didn't want to rock the boat. And so I wouldn't complain about things, but yet then I would kind of start covering up with behaviors, whether it was the eating disorder or the drinking or the inappropriate relationship or whatever it was. I learned these ways to self-soothe and self-medicate, no matter what that looked like. And so I think that's why it's, you know, so important to me now and over the last, you know, few years that I have learned those coping strategies. And I think it really goes back to, you know, that's kind of how my book came about is as I got to this place where I realized, okay, drinking's a problem. And then I started uncovering the reasons why I was drinking. And oh gosh, well, those were the same reasons that I had an eating disorder. And oh, those were the same reasons I had these inappropriate relationships. And oh, that was the same reason I did this and this and this. And it all really stemmed from that not having very strong sense of self.
That's so fascinating. And thank you for sharing that. Like, I'm curious, like one of the things that I see a lot, and I'm also someone who's had a history of eating disorders myself. Talk about, you know, what you learned, you know, some of the things you unlearned about yourself and in particular with your connection between your relationship with your eating disorder and your relationship with substance?
Well, it really comes down to control, right? Which it's the ultimate form of control to know that, especially with food. Yeah, right. And I think the really tricky thing about food as opposed to substances is that you can live without alcohol. You can live without drugs. You can't, even no matter how addicted you are, someone can lock you up in a room, not give you drugs, not give you alcohol, and you can live.
Right.
But food, you need. Like, that's always, I think, the tricky part with someone who has never experienced an eating disorder, which honestly, I think most people are somewhere on the spectrum, let's be honest, with our body image society and, all the messages we're sold around diet culture and all of that. Like, we're all somewhere on there. But that's one thing that's why it's so tricky, because you've got to live with food. You have to learn how to eat. And so being able to stay thin or stay a certain size and still eat to the point where, you can still lose weight, but stay alive. There was something about that. I mean, I know how it sounds, but it was so, there was something that made me so proud of myself. Sure. I guess when you're at a point, and you totally understand that it's just a control thing. And I still, I have to catch myself all the time, because there were many years really where I didn't know when I was hungry. I didn't know when I was full. I really never, I think it goes back to that sense of self. Like, eating to me was a tool. It wasn't about whether I needed it or not. It was, what can this do for me? Or how can I use this to make myself a certain size? Or how can I cut this out? Or how can I, it was very, disordered, right? It was a very disordered relationship.
Yeah.
And I think it's still very hard. And I don't want to say especially as a woman, but the messages that you're sold all of the time, and the culture of wellness, everything seems to come down to your size. And I have to check in with myself, like, does my weight matter? Does my size matter? At the end of the day, no one's going to talk about it at my eulogy. And so and also, what do I want to show my girls?
Right. Yeah.
So that's a really hard thing to get around. And I say, I still, I struggle with it. I'm still on a daily basis. I have to make sure that I'm eating for the right reasons. And I'm not going to that place where, oh gosh, I could just skip this meal, or I could, I could eat that whole box of cookies, or I could, even though I know, I have to ask myself, like, how is this going to improve? Is this going to help? Is this going to improve things? And really check in with myself. It's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. I think I'm like about 10 years recovered from anorexia myself. It was certainly difficult. And you said, Emily, maybe won't say, you said, I'm not going to say that, women have it harder, but I will say that women have it harder for sure.
Yeah.
As across the board. And there's so much in our society. And I had the wonderful Christy Harrison on, who wrote a book called Anti-Diet, just all about, the diet industry and the insidiousness of it, and what it tells us and how it informs. And it's coming from a place of fear and anxiety, and not, the sort of nourished sense of self, identity stuff that we really need to focus on, the stuff that you're sort of learning and talking about.
And I think with daughters, I've got 3 daughters, and I've got one daughter who she's had a malabsorption issue since she was a baby. And so with her, we've always had to take this approach where she can eat whatever she wants, whenever she wants. And so here I am, this parent who is trying to do everything to make sure my girls, and my boys too, but I just feel so much more strongly about it with the girls, like, never talk about their bodies other than, you're strong, you're able to do this, but never from a physical standpoint, whether, skinny or fat are not words we use in our house. Right.
Right.
Or good foods, bad foods. We don't use those words in our house. It's, that has more nutrients. That has a lot of vitamin B. This makes you see better. I get so focused on it, and I don't want to be hyper focused on it. But so I've got this daughter who it's like, you want ice cream, eat ice cream. And so I do worry constantly. It's like, gosh, I hope I'm not setting her up for a problem in the future. And I hope I'm not showing my other girls, like, not that we restrict them by any means, but they know she's got a malabsorption issue. And so she needs to get a lot more calories than they do. And it's so hard. And I've talked to other parents, of recovered from eating disorders, and they feel the same way, that you're so focused on not creating an issue that you're worried you're going to create an issue.
Right.
And so,
Oh my gosh.
it's a tricky thing. And I have talked to them about how, I had issues with eating disorders, and they have friends, even, my daughters are 10, 11, and 13. And they have friends who have dieted. They have friends who, talk about whether they ate. A friend who has been in the eating disorder center already, like, they are already dealing with this stuff. So I try and be as honest as I can and say, look, I had a really big issue with food when I was younger. And if that ever starts to become an issue for you, just please talk to me, because I never did. And there were times when, my mom, and I did write about this in my book, and my mom and I have talked about this since, but, she did catch me purging once. And, I didn't know she saw me. And then she never mentioned it. And, she's come back to that point saying, gosh, I wish I would have just said something that, shoulda, woulda, coulda. You can always go in the back, it's hindsight's 2020, right? Yeah. But that's what I've experienced, knowing that she knew, and just that conversation just should have happened so much earlier. And so I just want to keep the gates open for my kids to talk to me about it, and know that, gosh, it's normal. It is normal. You've been told since you were a baby, basically, that you're a girl and this is how you're supposed to look like. And these are all the messages you've been shown. And so you're going to be confused. So just talk to me about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, just like trying to be aware without being so hyper focused. And gosh, it's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's, it's really tough.
Yeah, of course it is. And it sounds like you're doing an amazing job. What is interesting about things like addiction or, eating disorders, there's a lot of black and white thinking, right? There's a lot of just like, it's this or that, right? And and the more we can, and you're doing this with your daughters, the more we can just be open and honest and allow for different ideas and thoughts and grays, right? And sort of you being vulnerable about your story and all of that. Like, I think that's what's more reflective of reality and us as humans, not the sort of the black and whites of like my eating disorder, right? Where it's like, I gotta be this way or I'm going to punish myself, for instance, right? Like it's, we need to break out of that sort of rapid cycle of thinking.
It's so true. It's like the diet starts Monday mentality is so beat into us. And, gosh, I had one cookie, so I might as well have the whole sleeve. Those are such automatic thoughts.
Right.
And so those are those little things that you don't think are harmful that just kind of start eating away at you. Or, gosh, my pants are too tight. Well, why don't I just buy new pants? Like, I finally got to that point where I'm like, if these pants are tight, why am I still trying to fit into these pants? Like, I'm 41 years old. Like, let's be real here. And so those are the things that I'm so much more aware than I ever was now, having girls who are watching me. Yeah. Because I never want them to have to go through, and I know they'll go through things. I can't protect them from everything, but just trying to be more aware of it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Did you ever get like treatment for your eating disorder?
Sort of. When I was in college, my sorority sisters, took me to a treatment center, and I was, it was, psychiatric wing of the hospital, basically. And I was there for a few days, and I ended up having to drop out of school and coming home. And, that's when my mom and I actually had the talk where she said, gosh, I did see you throwing up one time, and I wish I would have talked to you about it then. I kind of thought it would just go away, or it was just a phase. But what I was dealing with, again, the eating disorder was just one of the tools I had at that time. I was also drinking a lot. I was also doing drugs. And so I was in this treatment facility, and I was there for an eating disorder. So they treated the eating disorder as best they could. Like, okay, you're going to go home and live with your parents, go see this therapist, do this, do that. They put me on a medication, and really living with my parents, that helped a lot because they were cooking for me. They had a watchful eye on me, but it didn't really get to the root of the problem. Like, sure, here they were feeding me meals, but what about then in a couple of years when now I'm going to be living on my own? So I got lots of temporary fixes along the way, just never really got to the root of the problem, honestly, until 4 years ago when I really started doing the work of getting sober. And I did EMDR, and I did lots of therapy, and got to the root of why I was doing all those things in the first place. Now, was I recovered from an actual eating disorder? Yeah, I hadn't starved myself. I wasn't binging and purging. I wasn't exercising compulsively. I wasn't necessarily using the behaviors. So I would say I'm recovered. At that point I was recovered for, probably 15 years or so from the actual eating disorder behaviors, but I was just using other things. I was then using alcohol, relationships. And so I didn't really get to the root of the problem, I would say, till about 4 years ago when I started the work towards getting sober.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd imagine that's pretty common. Like there's such there's a lot of like treating symptoms and not sort of the core of what's going on. The behaviors are just a result of, the broken mindset, right? And relationship and sort of emotional health, and mental health, I like a good example of this is my brother, Tannen, has schizophrenia, and he was, having issues with alcohol. And the first thing our family did was really kind of address the alcohol issue, which, I think, again, hindsight is 2020, may have not been the right approach, but thankfully he's been sober for over 3 years now, and getting treated for his schizophrenia. But I bring that up. I bring my brother up as an example just because, we were treating maybe a symptom of his mental illness, not necessarily his mental illness.
Exactly. And I do think someone said to me the other day, like, what color shirt did you wear? And I think that's such a good example, because what's the reason you were drinking? What's the reason you were binge eating? What's the reason you were shooting up? Like the reason behind. And I think people are just so accustomed to not even asking themselves. It's like, gosh, I just want to, eat this box of cookies. It's just going to make me feel better temporarily. I just want to drink. It's going to make me feel better temporarily, and numbing those temporary feelings, which then, of course, we all know end up causing you further discomfort over and above that. But you just asking ourselves beforehand. That's why I always check in with myself. Like, is this going to improve anything? Is this going to make the situation worse in the long run? And, I think that's something that I wasn't doing for a long time. And I think it's something that really, as a society, we don't ask ourselves. How are you feeling about this? Just checking in with yourself.
Oh, yeah. So important. So what did your alcohol, like your relationship with alcohol, look like before you got sober? And what were you, because you were a mom, you were you were a partner to your husband, like how did that operate?
So I think I always had a problem with alcohol in the sense that I wasn't always drinking. I mean, I gave up. I didn't drink during any of my pregnancies, so 9 months at a time, 5 times. But when I did drink, I drank excessively. So my drinking always looked like binge drinking. As a teenager, you're already doing something wrong when you're drinking. It's illegal. And so to be binge drinking when you're a teenager, it's like, oh, it's just another act of rebellion. It didn't really stand out. And in college, binge drinking was kind of a rite of passage. And then as an adult, again, it's not like something bad happened every time I drank, but anytime anything bad did happen, whether it was I got in a fight with my boyfriend or, I cheated on somebody or whatever, I could always attribute it back to drinking. But yet, again, my behaviors didn't look that different. So fast forward through having kids, all these pregnancies kind of held off the binge drinking. And honestly, once, I was done having kids and I have all these little kids, all of a sudden I was in the middle of this mommy wine culture where play dates, you bring a bottle of wine, you need to let off some steam, you go out for a mom's night out. It was so accepted. The problem was I was drinking, with my friends, and then at home I might finish off the bottle. And it just became such an ingrained part of my life that I didn't even realize. It was really addiction kind of hiding in plain sight. I didn't know how bad it had gotten. So, my drinking behavior didn't look that different than anybody else. So as I wasn't taking breaks, you're not getting pregnant anymore. It just kind of kept escalating. And honestly, my husband and I, we connected around drinking too. A lot of our activities centered around it. We'd go beer tasting, we'd go wine tasting, and we would have a beer or a glass of wine at night together, and not realizing how much it was adding up. This was my husband can have a beer, drink half of it and leave the rest of it, which I could never understand. Like, why are you leaving that there? It just, you can't waste it. I mean, it's right there, drink it. So, after my youngest, when he turned about 1, I was in this place where, okay, we're done having kids. I kind of got my body back, and I kind of got into this place where I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting any younger. I just felt like I craved freedom, like I felt trapped, and I started drinking more and binge drinking more, and I was hanging out with people really for the drink rather than the relationship, and so it just got to the point where I didn't even really know who I was anymore. And I just couldn't look away from it anymore. I ended up having an affair. I ended up attempting suicide. Like, it went to a lot. I got a DUI. It went to a lot of very dark places. And yet at every stop, I was still, the medical professionals at the hospital weren't telling me I had a drinking problem. My husband didn't even think I had a drinking problem. My friends didn't think I had a drinking problem, because it is so socially acceptable to get drunk. No matter what, all of these things that were happening, I could put other excuses on them. Oh, I'm lonely. Oh, my husband travels too much. Oh, this. Oh, that. Oh, I need to, let off steam. And finally, I had to get to the point where I knew I was eliminating myself. And it finally was enough rock bottom moments to say, okay, I need to put a name on this now. And I reached out to a friend who was brave enough to share her story about how she went to AA and it saved her life. And I was like, you know what? I got to do something. And so I reached out to her and went to my first AA meeting, and I didn't look back. And I kept doing the next thing, because I knew what I was doing was not working. And I knew that, all of these secrets that I had about how much I was drinking, and these secretive behaviors, this affair I'd been having, and hanging out with people who I really shouldn't have been hanging out with, and all these things that I was doing, like being secretive was not helping. And so I kind of turned a new leaf and, became fully honest. And with that, it really required me going back into my past and confronting behaviors that I had, and confronting things that had happened to me, and things that I had done that I really had never done before. So,
Wow.
when I wrote the book, it honestly started out as a journal of, okay, this is going to be about a mom getting sober, and it turned into a memoir of my life, because again, it wasn't about the drink. It was about why I was drinking, and really just peeling the onion back to all those feelings underneath.
Yeah. It really is never about the drinking.
Right.
It's something else. Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing that. It's so interesting. I don't know who to attribute it to. I don't remember, but there's a quote, something along the lines of life is about, the journey of life is about, the pursuit of knowing ourselves. And
Yep.
that truly is what it is. And when we have things in our lives, that detract from that, or strip that away, then that we need to look at that. We need to investigate and okay, what's going on here? And I'm so grateful that you were able to get through that and realize that, because it's probably has been a lot of work.
Oh, definitely. But you know what? It's so much less work being honest than it is trying to cover up things all the time. And
Oh, sure.
which I didn't realize how much of my brain was dedicated to all these behaviors, and whether it was drinking or whatever it was. I mean, it was so exhausting, and I didn't even realize it. So, I can't say that I even knew who I was until I was, 38, 39 years old. And, that's a long time. So I'm glad to finally now, have my sense of self at 41 years old.
Well, I'll just put this back on you because I do this to myself. I would say that, like I've said in the past, like, oh, like, cause I'm 38 now, and, I'm, for the first time, I'm really sort of stepping into who I am. And I've said to myself, like, finally, right? But like, that's unfair to me. And I would say the same to you, Emily, is like,
Sure.
Your journey is your journey, and you found it when you needed to find it.
Absolutely. And I do say that when I have, had people who, I understand why they say it, like, oh gosh, look where you were before and look where you are now. And oh, isn't it so much better? And, there's not like two different people, right? It wasn't like the broken person and the fixed person.
Right.
I'm all that. That's all me. Like
Right.
all of that is integrated into me. And yes, the way I conduct my life now, way better. The way I feel now, way better. But, to say it you're right, like a non-judgmental way, like there was nothing wrong with the way I was before. It was just, I learned some new tools, and that's been a big thing. And I think shame kept me stuck for a long time. So it's really important for me to, again, like talk to people like you. And the more I share my story and the more I share with others who reflect their stories back, like that, it just makes, I feel like it just makes the world a better place, because we all realize we're all broken, like in a perfect way.
Yeah, and sharing, I mean, 100% agree. Sharing is where vulnerability happens. Sharing is where empathy happens, and connection. And when we connect is how we learn and relate and sort of grow with each other. And that's truly the only way to do that. We can't do that alone.
Yeah. And I didn't realize too, for a lot of years, how little empathy I had for other people and myself. In a lot of ways, alcoholism it's a very selfish disease, but also very selfless. Like you even put drinking before yourself, right? And so once you're able to really conduct yourself in a way that's in alignment with really who you are, and see, gosh, when I, as I went through like making amends, thinking, I didn't think about you at all when I made that decision, or I didn't think about that person, or I didn't think about my kids, and not judging myself and putting more shame on it. But gosh, alcohol really took away my ability to have any empathy for anybody. And it's really what we need, because everybody's walking around with some sort of screwed up story that they have about themselves in their head. And I think it's so important to give grace for that.
Yeah, and it's so much worse the way we tell it to ourselves than how others perceive it in us. And sometimes we can only tell our own truths. Like in your case, like you seen that, what you were experiencing was a problem, and maybe the people close to you not seeing that. Like we need to be our own best advocates, but I also think that we can so easily, when it comes to telling our stories to ourselves, first lack empathy, and second, just distort it to shit,
Exactly.
Yeah. How did your relationships change, like with your husband, with your kids, after becoming sober?
Everything has been enhanced, honestly. I will say those friendships that were just centered around drinking, once the drinking was gone, the friendships were gone. But they were just really, they weren't friendships at the end of the day. They were really based on the drink, not the person, not the connection. I had a lot more anxiety when I was drinking. I drank because I was anxious. At the end of the day, taking off the 5 o'clock somewhere glass of wine, right, with the kids, to take the edge off. That would turn into 2 and 3 and a whole bottle by the time the night was over. But I didn't realize what I was missing out on, and all the little cute things that the kids do, even the things that I might have thought were annoying before, or that I drank over, the cute things they say, or the things they noticed, or the conversations that I missed out on. I didn't really realize how much I could enjoy being a parent. Like, yes, of course it's stressful and it's difficult, but I wasn't leaning into it, and I wasn't giving myself enough credit to know that I could, not only handle it, but be pretty darn good at it. So as a parent, I mean, my kids have noticed so much, and it's been it's been so connecting, even through, having a very public DUI. I had an interlock installed in my car, and so the kids knew. And so having to have those hard conversations with them, and them seeing me get sober, knowing that I used to drink and now I don't, and this is why, and being able to talk about it, it's, they're able to talk about things on such a more matter-of-fact level than I think adults realize.
They see a lot more than we realize.
Right.
Yeah.
So much more. Things that I thought they were missing. They would say, gosh, you guys, when you have your friends over, you're really sweary. Like, people would start swearing more, and they'd be really loud and goofy, and like none of that was lost on them. They saw all of it. And so now, my kids have mentioned many times, like, it's so nice that you don't drink anymore. And to not take that as a gut punch, because it kind of was at first, know, oh my gosh, how much they were seeing. But it's been a very eye-opening experience. And with my husband, it's there was so much, I think, shame, secrets, all of those things between us. And even from the simplest things of, being worried to leave my phone out, the trust was just so broken. And to know that we've come to a place where he can 100% trust me, and I can 100% trust him. And to know that we've been through things and worked through things, we feel so much stronger, and also relying on therapy. I mean, we go to marriage counseling, and it's funny. People are like, oh no, what's wrong? It's like, well, nothing. Like, that's why we go, because
the best.
We know exactly. We know how transformative it is. Like, we were in marriage therapy when we thought we were going to get divorced. Yeah. And we worked back to a place where we go now, because it's just like, it's our booster shot. Like, that's what keeps us, it helps keep our marriage healthy. It helps keep our eyes on what we really want. And I say the same, mental health is so important. And my kids know that I see a therapist. 2 of my kids see a therapist themselves, because if you don't take care of that part of you, then what ends up happening is you end up using the purging, or the binging, or the drinking, or all of these toxic things. Gosh, nobody wants that. So I want them to see what healthy, what that looks like, what that relationship looks like.
Yeah. That's very admirable, I think. And I'm with you. Jessica, my wife, and I go to couples therapy every once in a while, and it's very helpful. It's just good to have a different perspective and just be able to bounce our ideas off of each other in a safe space with a third party who can provide some insight. That's really what it is. And, our feelings that you spoke to it earlier, that you're only going because, you have an issue, or, that's just the stigma. That could go to hell,
It's so true. It's so true. The stigma is, I do think that's changing. I know that, gosh, my parents never talked about marriage therapy when I was growing up. And granted, I don't think there was a lot available back then either.
Right.
But I feel like if I had grown up knowing that that was just a regular thing you do, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. So I just hope that talking about it more, knowing that, the kids know we go see Zach, like they know that that's our marriage therapist guy, and it's just not a big deal to them. And it's also not a big deal that I've had a DUI, and not that it's not a deal. They know it's a very serious thing, but they know that it's okay to talk about it, because I got through it. And to use those as teaching tools and learning tools, and not as a source of anything to be ashamed of.
Yeah. No, and you're displaying such a beautiful example of like how opening our hearts and being vulnerable can transform, and showing that for your kids is truly a gift. So kudos to you, Mom.
Well, thanks.
You're welcome. I'm curious, what is the sober curious? What does that mean? Can you explain that?
Yeah. So I think anytime you question whether alcohol is serving you or not, you could be deemed sober curious. If you're questioning it at all, good or bad, you could, drink once a year. You could drink once a month. You could drink once a day. If you question the fact that, gosh, I wonder how this is for my health, I think that can deem you as sober curious.
Got it.
And I think it's very. I don't think it's a bad idea, a bad thing that it's trendy right now. I know there's a lot of talk about it, like, you don't want to downplay a very serious issue. And of course, alcoholism is very serious, addiction is very serious. However, alcohol, in and of itself is a dangerous substance. And while it's legal, you can use it if you want to. I don't think we should stigmatize questioning any use of it. You want to be curious about just having one drink a week. I think it's great to explore. And so I always suggest to people, I think it's about informed consent. Like anybody would benefit from cutting down. Anybody would benefit from cutting it out. I'm not a prohibitionist. And so I do think the sober curious movement is very positive. And I don't think it makes light of addiction at all, because I think it just brings more awareness to the fact that it is a dangerous substance, and we're constantly told that we need it to be adults, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can't have fun and you can't be attractive, and whatever the commercials, they all just make it look so wonderful.
Beer goggles.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. I would love to see an ad for wine that isn't like sexy and fun, where someone's like hammered and throwing up. I would love,
Sure.
but
yeah.
they don't show what it actually does. They don't show a picture of someone hungover, right?
Right.
So, I think it's important that people question, gosh, this makes me feel like shit every morning. Maybe I should stop doing it. And it's not that easy to come to that terms with it, but it's just questioning the use of it is, I think, in a nutshell, what sober curious means.
Yeah. Well, and it's in the name. It's curiosity, and
yeah,
curiosity
exactly.
is important tool for all of us, because
Right.
how are we going to get to know what helps us, what hinders us, what's going on in our hearts, what's going on in our noggins, like all of it. We need to be curious.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The one thing, can you tell me or speak to any sort of real life experience of because there is I feel like there is a stigma around or toward or targeted at, quote unquote addicts or alcoholics. Like, I've felt this in, people in my life. Like there seems to be you're like, oh, look at you. You're like an outlier. I mean, it's becoming a bit more, I think, accepted, but like, have you experienced any of that stigma?
Yeah. What I've experienced, I think, is the idea that, the label, right? If people put a label on something, and I think that's what kept me out of getting help for so long, is I would Google, am I an alcoholic? Because I didn't want to be an alcoholic, right? I didn't want to have that label. And so when people, again, it goes back to that being black and white, and people say, well, oh gosh, thank God I'm not an alcoholic. I don't have the diagnosis, so I can still drink like an asshole, right? Like, no, that's not what it means.
An alcoholic in their mind is the guy that
right.
Destroys the family dinner and, whatever.
Yep. The guy under the bridge who's homeless and lost his job, and now he's turned to heroin or whatever, like this idea of what an alcoholic looks like. And I don't, I don't view it that way. And I do think, for me, I can look back when I took my first drink, and I do think that it affected me differently than it affected my peers. I really do. So I do think there is something, whether it's in my DNA or whether it's just behavioral or whatever it is, that did escalate it in me for some reason. So I don't deny that it's a diagnosis, but also anybody can become an alcoholic because they have never been able to narrow it down. There's no blood test for it. You can't just point at someone and say, okay, you're an alcoholic, you're not, because it's an addictive substance. And the more you drink, you will eventually get dependent on it and need to drink more to maintain the same feeling you're looking for, right? So if people are looking at this as black and white, okay, I'm not an alcoholic, so I can still binge drink. Like, that's wrong way to look at it. So what I really want to do is try and just show it as a gray area, a big gray area, like a big scale of, you've got Aunt Linda who drinks once a year. And then you have, the people who already know they need help and are in AA. And then you've got a lot of people in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's the place where I think we need to do some serious, I don't know if work is the right, education, I guess. That, hey, you know what? It's legal. You can use it. But just because you're not over here in treatment in AA, rock bottom drunk, you don't have to be there to start questioning your relationship with it. There's a very big gray area that I do think people don't understand, that it's just a dangerous substance. And I really think that alcohol is the new cigarette. I think eventually, my kids, their kids, people will go, oh my gosh, can you believe that you used to be able to drink at Disneyland? Can you believe that you used to be able to drink at the play area up the street? Like, it sounds crazy to me now as a person who's sober that you could legally drink and drive your kids home from a play area where they serve alcohol, right? That sounds crazy to me, but I didn't think it was crazy 5 years ago. I thought it was awesome. And so I do think that it's changing. I think we are right at this very important point where people just need to, it's informed consent, just to know there is a danger. There is a danger of drinking in front of your kids every day from what they see. There is a danger to your own body, and you can get addicted to it even if you aren't diagnosed an alcoholic. It's important to know there's a danger there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think one really solid takeaway, listeners, for this episode is the world isn't black and white, and we need to be working on the awareness of the gray, because that's where we can get into trouble, in our lives, in our emotional lives. So thank you for sharing that, Emily. So you wrote this book called Highlight Reel. Came out 2019, 18?
Last year. September.
Great. Well, congrats first on publishing a book. That's a tremendous
Thank you.
Achievement. Yeah. So walk me through the journey of writing the book. Like, how was it? How the reaction, and just, share a little bit about that experience.
Yeah. So it really did start from, just again, like journaling and realizing that I was searching. I read so many recovery memoirs. I mean, so many. I just got addicted to recovery memoirs. I laugh. It's like now my new drinking is reading.
What are some good ones?
I read, oh gosh, there's so many. Blackout by Sarah Hepola, Raising the Bottom, Dry by Augustus Burroughs. Like there's so many. I have a whole list on my website. I could send you a million of them. There's so many. But you know what? I didn't see my story. And so that's what I wanted. Like, I didn't really see a lot of stories about moms who got sober. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to write one. And again, I started doing the work, and I started, I went to AA, I worked the steps, I went to therapy, I did EMDR. I started, treating the reasons I was drinking in the first place. I started unpeeling the layers. And again, it turned out to be a memoir, like my whole life since I was 8 years old, of all of these things that I was doing. And I just wanted to, number one, have my story out there for other people, because I knew I was searching for that story. And I also wanted it out of my head. And so I think I realized that if I accomplish nothing else other than just telling my story and having it out there and aligning myself, because so much of my life was compartmentalized. I was who I was when I was growing up, and then I was who I was in college, and then I was who I was as a married person, and I was all these different things to all these different people, and it really came down to aligning who I was as a person. So I just wanted to have my story out there. And as, I released it, it was, the reception from it was so, there was so much camaraderie around it, where so many women reached out and said, oh my gosh, like I had that same thing happen to me in college, or I've never heard anybody describe themselves this way, and this is exactly how I feel. And just the realization that, okay, this is why I did this. And I didn't necessarily have any next steps from it, what I wanted to do. I didn't know what would come next. And during that process of researching, I became a recovery coach, because I went through the courses just to learn more. And I started this online community, and it's just sort of morphed into this, my next chapter, really. And really, I just want to be out there as an advocate and try and help release some of the stigma for other women who are still afraid, because it was that one person who was brave enough, again, to be public about the fact that she was an alcoholic that gave me the strength to reach out. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to be that hand, even if it was for one person. And so I just say, I recover out loud for everybody to hear now. And, I just feel like it's me paying it forward.
I love that. And it's such such a courageous example of all the things that we can all do, listeners. You too, is like, I know for me, Emily, like I've had in sort of like, the last few years, like really going to therapy and really working on myself and really working on knowing myself. I've had such like beautiful gems pop up in my life because of it. And it's because it's specifically because of that work that I'm doing, that knowing myself, and you are experiencing the same thing, and sharing your story and doing the work to knowing yourself. And then that opens up that connection, and then that opportunity for you to really kind of, okay, these are my gifts. Like this is my passion. Like it's such a wonderful place to be.
Mm-hmm. It definitely is. And, I don't know who said it, but the, shame keeps you stuck, and secrets keep you stuck. And I have found that so to be true, that when you speak about things and you speak about those things that you were so afraid to tell, and they're out, well, then there's nothing to hold you back. And there's nobody who can hurt you. There's nobody who can use anything against you. I always joke, like, yeah, it's like, here's my email password. Good luck finding anything that's not in my book. Like, I've already told everything. So it's such a freeing feeling. Again, not having your passcode lock on your phone, and not being worried that someone's going to read something. Like, once it's already all out there, you've got nothing to hide. It's so freeing.
Yeah. So right now you've published this book. You're working with women as a recovery coach. Like, what does that experience look like?
So basically, women who've come out of recovery and aren't necessarily, ready to, they don't feel like they have a good support system. It's really, it's a bridge between therapy. So you don't look in the past. It's not therapy. It's not meant to look back and fix anything. It's, okay, here's where you're at now, and what's your goal? Like, for this week, what's your goal? Just to get through the week sober? Is it to make a plan? So it's kind of a cross between life coaching and sober living, except, they don't live with you. You're kind of being a role model, a cheerleader, a coach, all Advocate. Of those things rolled into one. Yeah. Just trying to kind of have their back. When maybe they don't have a great support system, and helping them find a good support system. And really I feel like my job is to make myself, not needed anymore. I want, my goal is to get people to the point to be their own coach. And have the skills. And if part of that is, hey, you need, you've got this thing that keeps popping up, maybe this is something you should talk to a therapist about, or you've got this other thing popping up, maybe you should go talk to a doctor about, or, just identifying things that maybe aren't in their control, and maybe that I can't help with, but that can be helped, and getting the tools to help with what they can help, and to maybe reframe the way they're thinking about other aspects. Because, I mean, as you know, a lot of the things we believe are really, they're from our brain, and they're not always true. You know, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we can be and what we can learn and what we can do are not always true. And so, you know, you can come out of treatment and all of a sudden you're dry, but you're not necessarily sober. You're just not picking up the drink. You haven't necessarily addressed the reasons you drank. And so it's all about helping people identify what those things are. You know, how do you feel and why did you pick up that drink, and what can we do about that?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's great. That's amazing. And sounds like you're really meeting people where they are and giving them that safe space to kind of show up and address that stuff. And the world needs more of it. So good job. Good job for creating those spaces.
Thank you.
Yeah. Emily, let's start wrapping it up. We always kind of wrap up the show. We'll plug your things toward the end, but we always wrap up the show talking about empathy heroes. Mm-hmm. These are people in our lives we know personally, or even, you know, characters from a movie or a book we love, or, you know, authors we love, quotes, etc. I will go first to give you a moment to think on your empathy hero. My empathy hero this week is my new friend, Tristan. Tristan is at Berkshire Letters on Instagram. She's a letterer, calligrapher, and many of the listeners will know, but maybe you won't know Emily necessarily. I've been building this new collaborative mental health community called the Feely Human Collective, and it will be out in early April. So by the time this episode's out, it's out. It's out into the public, which is very scary because it's a business I'm starting, and I've never done anything like this. But I'm very excited about it. I'm very passionate about it. And Tristan has been, I don't know Tristan personally. Like, we just met online, and she reached out to me, and she said, "Hey, I want to help." And she's a mom of 3, and she's been basically an intern for the Feed the Human Collective, which has been so amazing. And she's just helped with lots of, you know, content stuff and research. And I just wanted to call out Tristan because I know how hard it is to be someone, and, you know, she struggles with some immune disorder, you know, stomach stuff, and she's, you know, a mom of 3 kids, very busy, and she does homeschooling, if I remember correctly. So she's very busy, and yet she finds time to give to the Feely Human Collective, which I'm just so grateful for. So Tristan, if you're listening, and I hope you are, you're my empathy hero this week.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I did know about your project because I added your Instagram account. So so I'm following.
Oh yes, I saw that. Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah.
How about you?
So I would say this week, my empathy hero would be my 15-year-old son. My 13-year-old daughter has been struggling with a little bit of depression lately. You know, all of this coronavirus stuff has been pretty scary for her, and he's just been going out of his way without being asked just to check in with her and, you know, do little things, send her little texts. And if you know 15-year-olds, they're not necessarily, they're pretty inward thinking. They're not necessarily just because their brains aren't quite developed yet.
Right,
you know, they're not necessarily, they're kind of selfish by nature. And so he's been he's really been putting himself in her shoes and remembering what it was like as a 7th grader, and trying to talk about how, if you're going to love your 8th grade year. And, you know, it's really warmed my heart. And especially in those moments when teenagers, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to sell him to the circus.
Right.
It just, you know, it makes me realize that, you know, at the end of the day, he's a good human, and that's what matters.
Yeah. Wow. That's so beautiful. What a precious little kiddo you got.
Yeah. He's a good one.
Awesome. Well, Emily, where can the Yumi Empathy listeners out there connect with you, order your book, all that lovely stuff?
So my book is in most bookstores or Amazon. It's called Highlight Reel: Finding Honesty and Recovery Beyond the Filtered Life. And I am on the web at www.emilylynnpaulson.com and on Instagram at Highlight Real Recovery, and that's REAL.
Amazing. Well, Emily, thank you from California to Mexico. Thank you for being on the show and connecting with me and reaching out initially, and really appreciate you and appreciate what you're doing in the world.
Yeah, thanks so much. Been great talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. And to you listeners, as I always say, I'm here, you're here. We're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's you, me, empathy.